All right, how's it going? So today is February 3rd, so we're still a couple weeks away from the release of Resident Evil Requiem. And like everyone else, super excited about the game and, looking at more and more information online, seeing what people are talking about. And one thing I keep coming across, which is something I want to kind of speak of today and kind of gauge where everyone else's mind is at, because I've been kind of thinking about it for a little bit and kind of I don't know. I'm on the fence on if this particular theory is going to be a good thing or a bad thing in the long term for the game and what's best for the franchise moving forward. I know we have a lot more remakes coming out. We've got Veronica, Zero. There's rumors of them doing the original Resident Evil on the current engine. They've been talking about. Oh God, sorry, I'm still getting over being sick. There's still people talking about them doing a Resident Evil 5 remake, which that game with current climate online and with people could be a little problematic, but hopefully they do it anyway, just to get all the old games onto the current engine. But let's talk about the current theory that I've been seeing everywhere. You'll kind of see right here that Leon dying seems to be a very popular idea and theory cross. You got, could Capcom really kill Leon? What's Leon's fate in Resident Evil 9? Well, Resident Evil 9 will probably be the end of the era for major character. Leon's character, Leon Kennedy's final mission, Resident Evil 9. Resident Evil may kill off Leon. The theory is worrying. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The head cold has been kicking my butt for about a week now. So that's kind of what we're here to discuss. Like, is killing off Leon, is it worrying for the franchise, or is it kind of the unfortunate fire that it needs to move forward and, move on with the franchise? So let's talk about kind of the idea of why they would do this. We are going on, 30 years of this franchise now? So, original game, late 1990s. And you look at the characters' ages, which is kind of what I want to talk about today. Like, we're looking at the main characters of the franchise and kind of where they are today, right? Leon was born in 1977, making him 49 years old in Resident Evil 9. So he's not exactly a spring chicken anymore. And, he's not going to be able to constantly be running around punching, kicking, and, doing all this crazy action stuff moving forward. And then, let's look at the other characters. Chris, born in 1973, making him 53 years old. Jill, 1974, making her 52. Claire, 1979, making her 47. Ada, 1974, making her 52. Rebecca, 1980, making her 46. Sherry, 1986, making her 40. And, okay, so Grace Ashcroft, the new main character in Resident Evil 9, can't find good information about her age. Obviously, in the trailer, she could be anywhere between, mid-20s to, early 30s. She's already working for the FBI, so she's obviously above college age. But the first time Grace showed up in something was in the Shadow of Rose DLC. And in that, her age was established at 16 years old. But that storyline took place in 2037, making Grace's age, making her 5 years old in current times, which is a huge inconsistency. And I don't know how they're really going to explain that. I'm guessing they're just going to glaze over it, since Capcom kind of dropped the ball and introduced a character from a game that, no one can really play anymore without, doing some crazy, backward stuff on a computer to try to make the game playable. But it's just a hassle that 90% of people are going to be going through. And I would say more than half of the fan base have never played Resident Evil Outbreak. So that kind of causes an issue. So yeah, that's my main theory of why they would want to do it is, one, this franchise is 30 years old now. and the age of the mainline characters, they're getting up there. They can't be around to be, going through these crazy missions and doing everything. So it comes down to really only two options. Either, well, I guess three options technically. You start to wean them off to where they're just make cameos here and there. You kill off some of the major characters, which will explain why they're not around anymore. Or you keep them around as like mentor characters, kind of like what Chris showed up in Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, where he's just kind of like the background character telling Ethan what to do and kind of being in control of that. So it's kind of the really issues. But let's go over the good and the bad of what would killing Leon do to this franchise, right? So the good, the franchise is it's need for a refresh, right? We've been dealing with the Raccoon City thing for so long. We've been following around Chris, Leon, Jill, and Claire for 30 years now. And, it's time for a refresh. It's time for new characters. There's been times where they've tried to do that. They tried to do it in Resident Evil 6, right? Bringing on, Wesker's son, bringing back Sherry and all these other characters. But that game was kind of a commercial and kind of a failure in the eyes of, most fans of this series. So that was kind of a non-starter when it came to introducing new characters, because they're not really going to keep bringing in those characters if the game wasn't a success. We had the Ethan Winters story, which lasted two games, and they've already kind of killed him off and said he's no longer going to be a thing. So that kind of nipped that in the bud for when it came to expanding around him. They did do the Rose DLC, so they could bring back Rose, but myself and a lot of people I talked to didn't really like the fact that one kind of lead more into like the supernatural side of things and less away from like the medical virus zombie type of thing with, Rose having powers to like, stop monsters with her brain and whatever. And it started feeling a little too much like the really bad Resident Evil movies with Jovovich. So probably don't want to go that way. So they're going to have to do a refresh. And, a couple things of how they can do that. Like, are the Resident Evil games going forward just going to be, standalone stories? Are they just going to be, random locations with random characters moving forward? Or are they going to start a whole new arc with all new characters, and Grace is going to be kind of the catalyst for that, right? We'll have to kind of see where the story of Resident Evil 9 goes and what characters they introduce. And, if they kind of hint at future story or a future arc, we don't obviously know, because they're kind of keeping the story kind of close to their chest to this game. So we're not really going to know until we blow through it, and, any DLC or future story that comes out from the game, we'll be able to get a good idea. We'll make a video at the time, like theories on where we think the story's going to go from there. So, we'll have to wait and see. But I do think starting a whole new arc and a whole new chapter that can last multiple games and tell a story going through, kind of like what they've done with this in the long run, coming back to Raccoon City to kind of finish off the story, I think it'll be a good thing in the long run, right? New locations are going to be great, and then gives them a chance to add new lore. I'm just hoping they stay away from the going too supernatural, because that's kind of how Village started to feel with like the vampires and the werewolves and stuff like that. Seemed to lean too much in like the classic horror, like supernatural part, and kind of started to lean away from the, this is a virus, this is how it affects the human body, and yada, yada, yada. So I'm kind of hoping we go from that. Okay. So the bad, right? What would this do? For a lot of people who have been in this franchise from day one, killing off too many mainstay characters might be a little too jarring, right? Like, there's people of the franchise that are super fans of Leon. There's super fans of, Chris, and there's the fans that want to have, Claire and Jill have more story time moving forward. So killing off too many characters might be kind of jarring for the franchise and for the fan base as a whole. I can understand killing off some characters, but I don't know if killing off Leon or Chris or some of the mainstay characters, like the mainstay characters, I don't know how that's going to go, how that's going to play in the long run. I can see them killing off Rebecca. I can see them killing off Sherry. Some of the characters that are long-standing, but aren't like so influential as like the main four. You know what I mean? They're probably not going to kill off Grace because it's her first game. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see. Let's see what I was. But yeah, that's kind of where my mind is for this. You know, it might be good in the long run to kill off Leon so you can start to bring on more characters, but it could be kind of jarring. I am curious where they're going to go and how they're going to justify it and how they're going to lead onto it moving in the future. But I am hoping, like I said, that I am hoping this is going to be the beginning of a new arc for Resident Evil. And, you know, I'm hoping the story, you know, takes us some places we haven't seen and kind of revolve and restore some of the story and resolve some stories that we've been kind of curious on what was going on, especially since we're going back to Raccoon City. And I hope they, you know, they're less likely to have some of the inconsistencies, like I said, with Grace's age in the Shadow of Rose story. But we're going to have to wait and see. Tell me, what would you guys think of them killing off Leon? If they actually do pull the cord and kill Leon, a main character that's been around since the second game and has been, you know, one of the main characters of multiple games, how would you guys react to that? What would you guys think? How you would feel about the franchise moving forward? And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I'd like to see... God, I would love to see a discussion about that and see what everyone else is thinking. Because like I said, I'm still on the fence on what if I think this is a good thing or a bad thing. So thanks for watching, and I will see everyone when this game launches, and we'll be streaming it live every night. Thanks. See you later.